Good evening, little masters, and welcome to the very first episode of the Rings of Power wrap-up.
Folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room. I'm Sean Marchese, the Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, Alan Sisto.
And today we're going to be talking about the buildup of excitement and speculation as Amazon has finally started to give us glimpses into their upcoming series.
We're also going to talk about those amazing character photos we saw last week. Now, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. Here at the Rings of Power wrap-up, we discuss, analyze, dissect, and speculate all about Amazon's television adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth.
That's right. We're going to take deep dives into the lore behind the show. We'll talk about our favorite themes and characters, and much more, all based on our many years as Tolkien fans and podcasters.
But we also make sure we have a lot of fun along the way. So we are super excited to go on this new journey with you, and we are glad you've joined us.
Now, before we get into this episode, we want to remind you that if you'd like some company as you read any of Tolkien's works, you really should listen to our original show, the Prancing Pony Podcast.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't heard of us before, for 6 years and nearly 240 episodes, Alan and I have been walking our way through Tolkien's legendarium, from the Silmarillion to the Hobbit, and we're now more than halfway through Lord of the Rings.
We like to think of ourselves as the finest Tolkien podcast this side of Bree. And we've been invited to speak at Tolkien conferences around the world, and we've been honored with the Tolkien Society Award for Best Online Content. Honestly, we'd like to think there's no better companion for your extended trip through Middle-earth.
But this show is all about Amazon's new adaptation. So let's go ahead and dive in, shall we?
Yeah. Well, this first episode, we're going to take a look at all the stuff that we've seen so far, review the hype, so to speak. And we're going to start with what do we know so far, right?
Yeah.
Back in 2017 is when this all began. The idea of a TV series based on Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings was being shopped around.
5 years ago.
Hard to believe.
Has it been that long?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we first started hearing that there might be something like this coming down the pike. And I think at the very beginning, we had a few different players in that.
Oh, yeah.
Amazon, Netflix, HBO.
Yeah.
They were all kind of, possibilities there. And the starting price was supposedly something like $200 million, isn't that right?
The opening bid, $200
Yeah.
million for the rights. And
Yeah.
a little later in that year, by November, the deal was done. Amazon had paid close to $250 million, again, just for the rights.
Right.
Apparently, Jeff Bezos himself was involved in the negotiations personally, which is not very common, apparently. According to multiple sources, he's a big fan of the Middle-earth franchise.
I've seen that several places, and that's actually pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That gives me a lot of comfort here, and that makes me...
It does. Gives me some hope.
Pretty optimistic about what we're going to have here.
Agreed.
And Amazon committed to a 5-season run.
Mm-hmm.
The expected budget for each season was around $150 million.
Right.
But then they ended up spending something like over $450 million on just the first season.
Now, I think that figure, though, includes a lot of those startup costs, right? Things like costumes and sets and props that will be used for all 5 seasons.
I'm sure, for as long as they can use them, right? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of those things. That's true. But still, I mean, they're talking like this is going to be far and away the most expensive television series that's ever being produced.
Yeah. We're talking well over $1 billion for 5 seasons.
That's what I've seen. Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, man.
I mean, if we're talking about 8-episode seasons, like this first season is 8 episodes, you're talking about 40 episodes at $1 billion. That's $25 million per episode. And that's assuming it only stays at $1 billion. And I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I think you're looking at a show that's going to average close to $30 million per episode by the time all is said and done. Crazy.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money. And let's see, what do we know about where it's been filmed? So filming took place in New Zealand for the first season.
Of course.
And that's super cool, right? We're going to get some continuity with the Peter Jackson films, at least in terms of look and feel.
Yeah, yeah.
But then they ended up deciding to move it to the UK. And I think that's actually happening later this year when they start shooting season 2, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I believe they're talking about Q2. They're going to be starting to shoot in the UK. And there were several reasons behind that. The strict pandemic lockdown policy in New Zealand made it very hard for studio executives to come and take a look at the production. It made it hard for anybody to leave and then come back, with most of the cast being UK, or with many of the cast being UK based. They couldn't go home. And if they did, they had to quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks. It became really impractical. And then, of course, Amazon is also producing a number of other shows in the UK. So they have studios and facilities and things there.
So it's probably just more economical for them to do it that way.
Absolutely. One article I read, interesting. I don't know whether this is true, and I couldn't figure out whether there was any evidence for it. But they'd even said that the Tolkien estate had wanted Amazon to shoot it in the UK since England was a source of inspiration for Tolkien.
That sounds reasonable, I guess.
So long as they end up shooting it in the areas that were inspirations, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess it's all closer to the inspiration than New Zealand is, but I guess I do wonder, like, why did that never come up before? Maybe because the Tolkien estate has been more involved in this?
Possibly.
Because I have heard that there has been more involvement, more discussion with the Tolkien estate.
Yeah, that's been my understanding as well, that they've had to sign off on a few things that were maybe outside of the original scope of the rights. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that.
So that might also give us some comfort, right? I mean, for those of us who are big fans of the books, as of course you and I are, and I know a lot of people listening to this maybe aren't familiar with the books, or maybe you're casual readers of the books. But, for those of us who are really big fans, we're looking forward to the show. We want the show to be good.
We do.
We're excited about it. We've been watching all the news for 5 years, which has flown by.
Cautiously optimistic, I guess, would be the way you'd put it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But, we wouldn't be here talking about it if we weren't excited.
We want it to do well. We want it to be a great show and an enjoyable show for new fans, as well as for those of us like us who are, long-time book fans. We want it to be something that we can enjoy.
Exactly. And for people like us, I think the involvement of the Tolkien estate, as well as some of the others that they've been working with and sort of developing this, I think that it makes us feel like it's in good hands. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
So obviously season 1's been shot. Season 2 of the show is going to begin shooting later this year in the UK, but post-production is still going on season 1.
Right. And that's happening still in New Zealand. That's correct.
Right. You're right. Yeah. That makes sense.
And we're going to see the results of that first season on Friday, September 2nd. That's less than 7 months from now. And
wow,
I'll tell you, that time is going to fly really quick.
It is. I mean, I can't believe it's been 5 years since this first been started talking about. And I can't believe that it's been 2 years now.
Yeah.
Since the first images we saw.
That's right.
Promoting this show. So why don't we talk about some of those now?
Absolutely. Well, that very first promotion that we saw was the series of maps that we now know were drawn by artist John Howe. Speaking of which, if you're interested in hearing more from John, he was a guest on our other show, the Prancing Pony Podcast, late last year. You should check him out in episode 229.
And folks who are not familiar with the books may not know that John Howe is actually one of the artists who worked on the Peter Jackson films as well.
Yeah. John Howe and Alan Lee were the design consultants.
They basically did all the conceptual art. And when you look at Peter Jackson's version of Middle-earth, you're seeing a distillation or a filtration of John Howe and Alan Lee's vision of Middle-earth. And
absolutely.
John Howe is one of the finest, one of the most well-known Tolkien artists working today, and an absolutely fantastic guy.
Yeah.
And we did have the pleasure of speaking to him. It was in season 6 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, like you said, episode 229. But yeah, so it was February 2019, I believe, when the maps first started coming out. And
sounds right.
If I recall correctly, I mean, the first map didn't have any labels on it whatsoever.
No labels at all. It was just the land itself. And so,
right. And it was also just the familiar Middle-earth map that we're used to seeing.
Ranging from, a little bit south of Gondor and Mordor to, above the Shire and out to, the other side of Mirkwood. That was about it.
Right. And they ended up releasing 4 more maps.
That's right.
Over a series of maybe 4 or 5 weeks or something like that.
Something along those lines. And as they released the maps.
Yeah, they got more detailed, didn't they?
They did. We started to see a few more names show up on the maps. And interestingly, they weren't the names that we would have expected. They were names like Calenarthon instead of Rohan.
Right.
Minas Anor instead of Minas Tirith. The Shire wasn't even named at all. And you started to put pieces together. And by the time the last map showed up, oh boy.
That one revealed what the previous maps had just hinted at, which is that we were dealing with something much earlier than the timeline of Lord of the Rings. We were looking at something in the Second Age.
That's right.
And that's because that last map panned out and you actually saw the island of Númenor off to the west.
Yes. And that told us for sure that the show was going to be taking place in the Second Age of Middle-earth, which would be after the defeat of Morgoth at the end of the First Age and before the second rise of Sauron.
That's right.
Who, of course, was defeated at the end of the Second Age. If you've seen the Jackson films or read the books, that battle at the beginning of the movie, that takes place at the end of the Second Age.
That is absolutely correct. So the end of the Second Age is about 3,000 years before the events of Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And we're probably looking at even earlier than that, but we'll talk more about that as we go on in the show. But I think it's also worth noting for people who maybe are just familiar with the movies that, when you see folks like Aragorn, there's all these references to Aragorn's Númenorian heritage. He's one of the Dunedain, one of the men of the West. That's all a reference to the fact that he is a descendant of the lineage of this ancient kingdom of Númenor. That was a very powerful kingdom of men in the Second Age. But he's not the only one, right? I mean, we see Faramir and Boromir, the city of Minas Tirith. That is one of the kingdoms that was founded by exiles, refugees from Númenor. And we'll be talking more about what happened to Númenor as we go on in this series. We've got quite a few episodes coming before the Amazon show even starts. And we'll spend some time talking about the history of the Second Age, what happened between, as you said, like after the fall of Morgoth, how Sauron rose to power, what happened to Númenor. And we'll actually be able to talk about a lot of the things that the show won't be able to talk about.
That's right, because they don't have licenses to talk about Unfinished Tales or the Silmarillion. They only have the licenses for the Lord of the Rings, specifically the appendices, as well as the Hobbit. And so if it's not mentioned there, they can't talk about it unless they've gotten special approval.
It seems like they can't touch it based on what we know. So
they must have gotten some approval, though, based on one of the other things we're going to talk about tonight, because there's very much some First Age clues in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. So again, I think what they're kind of doing is they're going by what's in the appendices, and they're including enough to make it familiar to those of us who know the story in the books. And, I'm sure that they've got a team of people working to make sure, lawyers and others, making sure that they're doing what they can. And again, I'm super excited by what I've seen. But yeah, we'll spend some time talking about what we know from the books. And that's going to kind of give you sort of a foundation before the start of the Amazon series.
Yeah, we want you to be familiar enough with the lore to enjoy what's going on and to know all the background, to make the show just that much richer when you start watching it. So
that's right. So if that excites you, well, be sure to subscribe to this podcast, and we will bring you up to speed before September 2nd.
For sure. Folks, we're about to get back to tonight's discussion, but before we do, we want to make sure you know that when you finish listening to this episode, the talk continues all night long at the Rings of Power wrap-up.
That's right. Our amazing listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces, from Facebook to our Reddit community to Twitter and more.
That's right. Now on Facebook, just look for Rings Wrap-Up. Be sure to follow the page so that you get all of our posts, but also join our group for some great discussions on the show and on our episodes.
And you can also find us on Reddit at r/ringswrapup. And we're also at ringswrapup on Twitter and Instagram.
And folks, if you enjoy the show, please consider helping us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and a rating over on Spotify. And please recommend us to your friends.
Absolutely. Please do.
And thank you for doing that.
All right.
Now let's get on to the next thing that we saw. The next thing, this would be August of last year. Amazon gave us all a single frame from the first episode, an image that honestly got a lot of us talking for a very long time. And let's kind of go through that a little bit, right? The image shows a figure with short hair. We don't know right away whether it's a male or female. The figure is wearing a white robe and looking off into the distance. Then we see a city in the midground off to the left that has very elvish architectural details. It's similar to what we saw in the Grey Havens in Peter Jackson's films. With
very much so.
Domed roofs, a lot of kind of organic-looking trim.
Tall towers.
Skinny towers.
There's a tiered structure, almost like Minas Tirith also from the Jackson film.
A little bit, you're right. There's a touch of that, isn't there?
But it's got kind of more of a neoclassical feel, like you said, like the domes and the very tall towers.
There's the skinny columns with sort of this organic or growing sort of motif, lots of curves,
arches and buttresses and things like that. It's gorgeous. And it sure looked familiar to a lot of fans of the books.
That's right. And the city is on a hillside looking out over what appears to be a bay or a lake. But it's what's in the far distance that got us really talking.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, if you look at about the midpoint to the right.
Well, it's where your eye gets drawn. It's the brightest thing in the picture.
It is the brightest thing in the picture. That's well said. It's kind of like the third quadrant from the left, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see these two trees of light.
Yeah.
And instantly, of course, anybody who's familiar with the books, particularly the Silmarillion, is like, oh, that's the two trees of Valinor. That's Laurelin, the gold tree, and Telperion, the silver tree.
Mm-hmm. And that got us wondering, since the show is covering the Second Age, how are we seeing the trees? Is this a flashback, or is this maybe a prologue like we saw in Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring? And then who's the person in the image? What city is this that we're seeing? So let's talk a little bit. Let's speculate and discuss. What did you think when you first saw that?
Well, so I think it's probably worth level setting for people who don't know the story of the Silmarillion. I'm not going to spoil anything.
No.
But the two trees are not around anymore by the Second Age.
No, that's fair to say.
They are going to be gone by the Second Age.
Mm-hmm.
The two trees and Númenor don't exist in this at the same time.
Correct.
Not by several hundred years. So, okay, this should not be there based on the fact that Númenor was on that map.
Right.
So yeah, what is this? And immediately I assume this is probably a flashback.
Yeah.
I think that this is probably going to be an establishing shot.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll hear a voiceover of a character telling the story.
I think so.
Of the earliest First Age, talking about the two trees. It is quite possible that at least one of the characters that we know is going to be in the show could be telling us this story, because one character who's going to be in the show was there.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what this is. That's kind of what I assume. I think it's a flashback. Yeah. And I also think that the city's got to be Tirion upon Tuna.
It's got to be.
Right?
It's got to be Tirion upon Tuna, and we're looking at the tail end of the bay.
Yeah.
The Bay of Eldamar.
That's right. Because we know that Tirion it's a city on a hill, so that fits.
Yeah.
It's a city in a valley, right? It's in the valley of the Calakiria.
Yeah, these are the mountains that we see to the left and right. These mountains, the Pelori, go north and south along the continent of Aman and basically seal off the continent from the rest of the world, except for this pass, the Calakiria. Yeah.
And the pass is called the Calakiria because that's Elvish, that's Quenya, for the Pass of Light.
Right.
And basically that's called that because you can see the light of the two trees through it. So that totally fits what we're seeing here.
It really does. And I couldn't think of other examples. I mean, maybe we're looking at compressed distance and this is Toloresia, but I don't think so.
I don't think so either. No. Because it looks like there's land all the way. Right?
I know.
Because
that's the thing.
Toloresia is an island and there would be
correct.
Just some water, some sea in between that and the two trees.
This has to be Tirion upon Tuna.
I think so. I think it has to be.
But who's the figure then? I mean, if we zoom in, I think it's a male figure. We've got fairly broad shoulders, narrow hips, short hair. I could be wrong.
Is the hair short or is the hair...
Or is the hair in a bob,
perhaps? In a bun?
Yeah.
As I'm looking at it, it kind of looks like it could be in a bun. Now, I don't know. I am notoriously bad at discerning different genders from quite a long way away. I should have taken the Monty Python course on...
Oh, yes, on how to identify trees from a very long way away.
How to distinguish a male elf from a female elf from quite a long way away. Number 1, the larch. I don't know. I thought this was a male figure. Based on what I know now, is it possible this could be Galadriel?
That's kind of a direction I'm leaning.
I mean, we do see her in armor in some of the most recent stills from the Vanity Fair article.
True.
So I think it could be her. I'm not betting on it.
One of her names was Nerwin, which means man maiden. And this isn't to, suggest that she's indistinguishable from a man. It's to say that she has some of these manly characteristics in a sense. She's tall, she's strong, she's driven. And so, maybe this is her.
I'm leaning more towards it being her than anything. I am not a betting man and I'm not putting money on it, but I do think it could be her.
I wonder, could it be Finrod?
It could.
It's Galadriel's brother.
That's right. And we do know from the Vanity Fair article that apparently she's going to be avenging her brother's death. Now, we know who killed Finrod in the books.
Yeah. She's not going to be going after him. He's already gone by this point.
Well, he's coming back.
Yeah, that's true.
So and maybe she's looking for some of the people that were working for him.
Fair.
Maybe she's going to be looking for signs that he's still out there somewhere. So that actually would be a great way to kick off the series. And honestly, if it is Finrod, then that would be an interesting way to have maybe Galadriel telling the story
Right.
of her brother from the time of the two trees down to the present, maybe giving a little some of that backstory and also kind of setting up her own arc in terms of what she's doing to avenge her brother. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of those two. I can't see it being anybody else.
Yeah, unless it's just random unnamed elf number 3, but that seems really unlikely that they would do that on an important image like this.
Yeah, because he's not wearing a red shirt.
No. Well played.
He or she is not wearing a red shirt, I should say.
Nor the white armor of a stormtrooper, for that matter.
Right, exactly.
For those of you who've seen the picture, by the way, I'm not sure if you know this. This isn't some digital render. This is an actual still from the 8K master. It is gorgeous.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They've
That's
done a
cool.
Fantastic job. Again, I keep hearing Richard Attenborough in Jurassic Park, spared no expense. I mean, of course this is going to look good. Look at the amount of money they poured into this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I want to learn someday that they actually made two
honest trees out of solid light.
Absolutely. And that they're somewhere in New Zealand.
Oh, I'm going to go there then if that's the case.
I'm booking my flight right now.
You're not kidding. Telperion and Laurelin? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And that city, that's a real city. That's not digital. No,
that's right. Yeah. You can buy a house in that city. Well, maybe not a house, maybe a condo.
A very small condo. A timeshare, probably. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the next thing that we saw. Last month, Amazon revealed the title of their series.
Finally.
The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Finally, as you say.
After 5 years of waiting almost.
I know.
And 2 years of waiting after knowing what the series was sort of going to be about, or at least when it was going to take place.
Right.
Yeah, they did it in a big way, man. It was a very impressive title drop. They did it with a lot of style.
That video really quickly made the rounds in all of the Tolkien circles online, every Facebook group, Twitter, every place that couldn't get away from it.
Oh, there's a lot of conversation, like breakdown of the runes and things like that you could see.
Yeah, that's true.
What's the symbolism of it? For me, I noticed that there's kind of a fire, water, steam, which is technically not air, but I kind of noticed that there's a little bit of an elemental symbolism to the whole thing, which reminds me of the 3 elven rings. That may have been completely unintentional, but
that may have been. Yeah.
But I liked it. Actually, the reason that there was fire and water and gas was because of what's happening in the video, right? They're actually forging.
Yeah, we thought this was maybe just some fantastic CG, but this was all practical effects. They used molten metal. They used liquid hydrogen. They used sparkler dust and all sorts of crazy stuff, compressed sand and wooden tables, and an incredible camera that could shoot at 5,000 frames a second so that they could then play it back in super slow motion.
That is amazing.
Incredible job on this project. Yeah.
I was blown away when I learned it was practical. I just assumed it was CG.
Yeah. And it looked like CG, and it looks like all the other titles that you might see out there.
Yeah.
Really super close up pans on the lettering. And
yeah, it's a little bit like, I know that this comparison is going to make some people cringe, but I mean, it's a little bit like that Game of Thrones type title sequence kind of video. It was that kind of thing.
But that's like every title sequence these days.
They all look like that now.
Yeah. Wheel of Time did the same kind of thing. You had, I've seen other shows, I think even The Crown has that same sort of deal where it's got this close up of some, dark surface, and it's just these, pans moving around. And I thought, wow, this is a really well done CG. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh my gosh, it is not CG. It is the real thing.
Fantastic. And that also gave me some hope.
Yeah.
Because it tells me they're not going to take the shortcuts just because they're available.
I think you're right. I think that they are going to commit to just absolutely top-notch production. And as a big movie fan myself and kind of a classic sci-fi fantasy horror movie fan, I love practical effects. And I love the fact that they're using some practical effects in that. And I hope there's a lot more coming in the show.
I do too. Yeah.
But we also need to talk about the title itself, right?
Yeah, we do. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power.
Yeah. So after years of calling it just like, Lord of the Rings on Prime or Amazon's Lord of the Rings series, then we finally learned it's called The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which tells us that it is probably going to be about the creation of the Rings of Power.
Indeed, it does tell us that. I also thought it was interesting that they went ahead and included The Lord of the Rings in the title.
Yeah.
And, it's like when you look at the Jackson films, they weren't just The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. If you looked at the titles of the films, they were The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
That's true.
The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And I think what we're seeing here is an attempt by Amazon to sort of make this an unofficial or unrelated prequel.
Like an unofficial prequel?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I also think, frankly, that's Lord of the Rings is the title everybody is going to recognize.
If you spend $250 million on the rights to make a TV show and you called it just The Rings of Power,
yeah,
probably not going to get as many eyeballs on the show.
Right. And it also makes sense now that we know that they're basing this primarily on the appendices, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we had all thought, like, well, if it's the Second Age, maybe they should call it the Silmarillion, or they should call it, a Calabath or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not working from those books...
That's a good point.
Or from that book, I should say, because that's all in the Silmarillion. It makes sense that they would call it the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
Yeah, they kind of have to, actually. They can't call it Unfinished Tales. They can't call it the Silmarillion. They can't. Yeah, that's a very good point.
I would still love to see a link back to the Third Age. I know there's been a few of us in the Tolkien community, folks in like the Tolkien Society and some of our folks we know online who've talked about the idea that wouldn't it be cool if we see a frame narrative that takes place in the Third Age? So we have like a character like an Aragorn or, probably not like Bilbo or Frodo. It would probably be somebody like an Aragorn, but, someone in the Third Age learning the history of the Second Age.
Yeah, I think we've read about some potential speculative ideas, like maybe Elrond telling a young child Aragorn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember I floated that idea and others have floated that idea. It's been one of those things that a few people have come up with on their own.
Yeah, it's a nice little idea. And that certainly would echo the way Tolkien did his stuff, right? I mean, frame narrative was what he did. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the Lord of the Rings itself exists within a frame narrative. The whole idea that these books were written by the hobbits themselves. They were written by Bilbo, Frodo, Sam, and they were documented in the Red Book of Westmarch, which ended up in the hands of J.R.R. Tolkien, who translated it, quote unquote.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it would make sense. It would feel very Tolkienish. He would be proud of them using a frame narrative. If they do, we just don't know.
Yeah. And now there may be some things that, and we'll get to those, some things that maybe he wouldn't be quite as proud of.
Maybe.
but we'll talk about those things as they come, if they come.
Yeah.
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 Let's go ahead and move on, though, before we wrap up the show. Well, before we wrap up, I have a feeling this next section is going to be almost as long as the rest of what we've talked about. It's the character images. Last week, Amazon released a series of 23 character posters, not revealing the character or the actor names. And instead, they focused these images solely on the kind of the mid-torso and hands of the cast members. So you couldn't see their faces. You couldn't see them standing next to others for scale. So you didn't know whether you were looking at a tall person or a short person. I've got to hand it to Amazon. This move generated a ton of speculation as to who was who and what they had to do with the story.
Oh my gosh, did it?
Wow.
I mean, it's all people have been talking about for the last week. So we're recording this on February 11th. These came out February 3rd. So it's been about 8 days. People have not been talking about much else, to be honest.
That's true. Until yesterday when the Vanity Fair article came out. Right. Yeah.
And the Vanity Fair article has given us some answers, right? So we now know who some of these people are.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that as we go through these images. We'll describe them well enough, and if you find the pages that they're on, they all typically are in the same order. Every place I've seen them, they've been in this order. So we'll go through them, we'll discuss them. We'll also reveal who some of them actually are, because we've been told by Amazon, either through the Vanity Fair article or through some other piece. And then, of course, the ones that we don't know, we'll talk about it. We'll speculate and we'll come up with some ideas. So let's go ahead and start with the red-bearded dwarf with the big hammer.
I mean, right away, everybody knew this is a dwarf, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I even just said that. The red-bearded dwarf. Yeah, it's got to be a dwarf.
There's a beard. There's a big hammer, mattock kind of thing.
The runes on the hammer.
Yeah.
Gold dust.
Yeah. This was clearly a dwarf.
Yeah.
And
I thought it might have been Narvi. I decided it was either Durin or Narvi. Narvi, of course, for those of you who don't know, was the one who carved the runes on the door of Moria.
Right.
In cooperation with Celebrimbor.
His name is actually on the door.
I, Narvi. Yeah, wrote these runes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I thought it might have been Narvi, but I also thought it might be Durin. And it turns out, sure enough, it is Durin. It is Prince Durin IV.
Yep.
So That was a fairly straightforward one. What
Yep.
about that next one, though?
Yeah, the next one with these gray clothes, these golden triangles, the gold dust on her hands. I mean,
Yes.
they did seem to be female hands. A lot of people picked
Yeah.
up on that really quickly.
Yeah, they're a lot softer, I think, than the hands of Durin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't sure about this. I was like, I didn't notice the gold dust on Durin's hands, so I didn't pick up on the dwarf thing immediately. But now that you see the gold dust on his hands, it's like, oh, well, this has got to be a dwarf too, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what we're seeing. This is a dwarven woman that we are now told is Princess Disa.
That's correct.
Now, that's interesting because there is a female dwarf named Dis, who is the sister of Thorin.
Mm-hmm. And we find this out about Dis in the appendices to The Lord of the Rings, which makes sense
Right.
because that's where they're going to be.
That's what they have access to. Yeah, that makes sense.
So this is Disa.
Probably not, obviously not going to be the same person because we're talking about a different timeline, but obviously they've taken a dwarven woman's name that we know and changed it up a little bit.
Very, very slightly. Now, we've actually got to see full pictures of both of them. If you find the Vanity Fair article, you'll see images of both of them completely as opposed to just these close-ups.
Yep.
Now, then we get this beautiful sword. I mean, this was the one that grabbed my eye from the beginning. Clearly, Telperion and Laurelin reproduced in the hilt and blade and this figure-wearing armor. I got to tell you, my first guess turns out to have been exactly right. I thought the hand looked slightly feminine, especially with like the long, you can tell that the thumbnail's a little longer.
Yeah.
It does look a little bit of a softer skin than we'd see with a male hand.
Yep. And the armor clearly looked elvish, right? I mean, this looks like elven armor that we've seen in Peter Jackson's movies.
Yeah, oh, yeah. You knew right away this is elvish. The blade, the armor, very clearly elvish.
And just the fact that it's the two trees on the pommel of the sword, that hinted that it was an elf.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that was a given immediately. And then my first thought was, well, I think that might be a woman. So I think that might be Galadriel. And sure enough, that is Galadriel. Not a surprise.
Now, what's interesting about this being Galadriel is that I remember hearing some people talking online, or rather reading some comments online, of people pointing out that this sword looks very ceremonial. It doesn't look like a sword one would actually be using for fighting.
Fair.
Now, what we've seen from the Vanity Fair article is Galadriel is actually a fighter. We see a still of her with a sword on her back, but it's a different sword.
Right.
So this may be more of a ceremonial sword that she has for a particular purpose.
Some sort of a dagger of some kind, yeah.
Maybe so. But she is definitely going to be a warrior Galadriel. We're going to see her in that breastplate again, just like in the movie. Will. So that's going to be cool.
It will. But boy, I got to tell you, the next one really, really threw me. Okay, here's the thing. I saw the gold. All gold, right? Gold clothes, gold rings, gold accessories. Everything in the image is gold. My first thought was Ar-Pharazôn. His name, he goes by Ar-Pharazôn the Golden. So yeah. I thought that's got to be him. But the more I looked at it, the more I thought this also looks elvish. Not only the little stars on the clothing there in the behind the hand, but just the way the fabric comes together there, that sort of diagonal lines, totally made me think of the elvish armor from the Battle of Dagorlad at the very beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. And that makes me think that maybe we're looking at Celebrimbor here.
I agree with the evidence that you're looking at. I think it might be Gil-galad.
Ooh.
If we have Gil-galad, I think this might be Gil-galad because, first of all, there's the star, right?
Yeah, that's
that
fair.
A star very much like that one is the sigil of Gil-galad.
True.
And those elves that we saw at the Last Alliance in Peter Jackson's movie in the prologue, those were elves of Gil-galad's army.
That's a very good point. Good catch there, sir.
Thank you. But we don't know for sure that he's in it yet because he hasn't been mentioned in any of the stuff.
I actually have another image that I think might be Gil-galad, but I think the other reason that I thought maybe Celebrimbor was all the rings, because he'd be all about the bling. I mean, he'd just be flashing it.
There is that. That's a good point.
Rolling up. He'd be rolling up in a Range Rover with like 24-inch wheels with like diamond studs.
It.
Yeah, he's flashy. He's blingy.
Yeah, you know it. I'm holding out hope that this is Gil-galad.
Okay.
Because that would be super cool to see. But
I agree, it would be.
If they don't use Gil-galad, who knows? Maybe they'll combine the characters in some way. I don't know.
Oh, they've got to use Gil-galad at some point.
Well, you think, but you don't know.
No. Yeah, you're right. They might not.
They don't got to do nothing, man.
They're not answering to me, Sean.
That's right.
I kind of wish they would. I volunteer right now, Mr. Bezos. I will work for a very low wage to be the consultant on this show.
I would love that.
Your lore consultant.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this next one. We definitely know who the next one is. Speaking of Gil-galad, right?
Yeah. Well, this next one is interesting. It puzzled me for a bit, right? Simpler clothing, a scepter that looks like it would represent the leadership of a city of some kind.
Definitely, yeah.
I didn't know who this was. I had some ideas in mind, but none of them were who it ends up actually being. It's Elrond.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't think it was Elrond because I thought the next one was Elrond, actually. The rich red robes opening the scroll. I thought for sure that's my boy Elrond right there.
No, that's a reasonable assumption because we know Elrond in the Third Age as a lore master, so you would expect to see him with a scroll. But based on what we know from Vanity Fair article, he's going to be kind of a politician. We're going to see him as a leader.
And an architect, apparently.
That's right, yeah.
I read that and I thought, well, that's interesting.
That's right. So the building, the political ambitions, this seems to point to Elrond, at least the way they're doing him in the show.
It does now, and of course they've actually revealed it. So
they have revealed it, and you can see him wearing these clothes in other stills.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
So yeah, it seems to fit with what they're doing for him. But yeah, let's talk about this red.
I had really thought Elrond originally, like you said, lore master. This does feel like Rivendell Elrond, Third Age Elrond, and I guess that's the thing I got kind of pulled in by that, but. Since it's not Elrond, who is it? This is actually the guy that I thought might be Gil-galad.
Okay, I could see that.
He's kingly. We know the story is going to take place in Lindon, or at least part of the story. And, he's opening up a scroll with some important kingly information on it. I don't know. I just thought, well, maybe it's Gil-galad since it's not Elrond.
It could be. This could also just be like a scribe or something like that.
It could.
He is wearing a red shirt, so he might be killed off in the first episode. We don't know.
Oh, man. Yeah, I wonder how quickly we're going to lose some of our favorite characters as we move along.
Well, Sean Bean's not in it.
He's
already been killed off in Middle-earth once. So
yeah. Boy, wouldn't that be ironic if he shows up in some sort of bit part and gets killed?
That would be very strange.
I hear he has it in his contract now to not die off in films.
Does he really?
I don't know. I'm sure that's like a joke, but I also am not 100% sure it's a joke.
I'm sure he's probably sick of it being a joke.
I'm sure he is. He's tired of being a meme. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be?
Well, let's take a look at this next one. We know who this next one is. This is the one with the sort of green man looking armor.
Yeah.
Holding an arrow.
Looks like a wooden breastplate. It's fantastic.
It does look like a wooden breastplate. That is amazing looking. The workmanship on this thing is fantastic. It could only be an elf.
I don't know. I didn't think that originally. I know you said it could only be an elf. At the time, I was almost thinking, okay, we know the story takes place in the Second Age, and Númenor at one point gets a little too big for its britches and starts kind of colonizing and playing empire and taking over a lot of areas in Middle-earth and, deforesting and all of this kind of stuff. This made me almost think of like a native Middle-earther, kind of a Robin Hood sort of dude, angry at the Númenorians. And the green man emblem was some sort of, a forest ranger sort of guy. But that was a stretch.
Well, it is only because you wouldn't expect anybody else to have the workmanship to produce something like that.
That's true. That's a very good point. The detail in this is fantastic.
That's a gorgeous breastplate.
Isn't it?
And of course, now we know that it is an elf. It's a Sylvan elf specifically, so one of the wood elves.
Uh-huh.
And his name is Arondir.
Arondir.
Which we'll probably talk a little bit about next time.
Yep. And he's directly connected with the next image because that's also been revealed. This next one is a woman named Bronwyn, and she and Arondir have some sort of forbidden love sort of connection. We hope that it is inspired more by Andreth and her love of Ignor, Finrod's brother, and a lot less by Tauriel and Keeley. Let's just say that.
You're still on that, aren't you?
I am still on that, man.
It's got to be more inspired by Andreth and Ignor. So. I mean, from what we know about Bronwyn, she's a human healer woman.
Yeah.
She's in love with some sort of elven warrior. He's a Sylvan elf, not one of the Noldor, which Ignor was in the books. But still, I mean, that's clearly what they're thinking of when they do this.
I sure hope that's what they're echoing. Because I got to tell you, the story of Andreth and Ignor is beautiful. It's poignant. It's obviously deeply sad because they can't be together. And, we get one of the best pieces in the history of Middle-earth as a result of it, the debate of Finrod and Andreth.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. But yeah, so that's who that is. All right. What about this next one with the broken sword? Black, evil looking, and well, let's face it, kind of impractical as a sword. No clue on this one. I'm leaning towards a character being somebody who finds this ancient evil, right? Not its bearer.
Maybe. Yeah. I got nothing on this one.
I got nothing either.
I hope it's not something that's going to turn him evil.
Oh,
You know,
I'm sure it is.
evil artifacts are not to be handled lightly in Middle-earth.
No, and certainly don't go using it. Yeah.
No.
Bad
Well,
sign.
he can't do much with it, really.
No, we'll find out more about that.
What good is a broken sword in Middle-earth, Alan?
I don't know. Ask Aragorn.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a really cool image, though.
It's a great image, and that's a terrifyingly evil-looking sword, I have to admit.
It is.
Speaking of cool swords, the next one, right? This one had us all thinking Rohirrim, but there is no Rohan at this point.
Right, exactly. As we were just talking about
Yeah.
with the maps, right? Rohan at this point is called Kalinarvan.
Right.
It's not, the Rohirrim aren't around. In fact, their ancestors, the Eotheod, are not even around yet.
No, they live way up in the north, and they're not even going to be in this show. But this is
Right.
one we already know about. It turns out his name is Halbrand. He's a human,
Right.
and we'll see him on a raft with Galadriel at some point.
Some point pretty early, I believe.
Yeah, very early, I believe. I want to point out one thing. Look at the sleeve that comes up against his hand there, that sort of red, leathery cloth with that little pattern. Keep that in mind because we're going to see something real similar. Let's move on to the next batch. The next one is clearly a hobbit, right? Or a Harfoot, I should say.
Unless those are gigantic acorns.
Massive acorns. No,
I mean, come on. And I'm cool with this. I know we're going to talk about this more next time when we get into the Vanity Fair article, but
right.
I think it's cool that we're seeing hobbits. I know they're not calling them hobbits. They're calling them Harfoots. But, I mean, we who've read the books, we know that Harfoots are one of the 3
That's correct.
kindreds that became the hobbits of the Shire. So
that's correct.
They're totally hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're fine.
Yeah.
I think I'm happy to see them. I think it's going to be really cool to see the ancestors of hobbits. There's nothing in the book that says they weren't around in the Second Age.
That's correct. They didn't do anything particularly noteworthy during this time.
Right.
So we won't see them involved in the scope of history. But yeah, I'm with you on this.
But just the scale of the acorns in the hands and the sort of the simple clothing.
Very simple, agrarian.
This definitely seems rustic. Yeah. And we know that the Harfoots are a bit wilder. They're not like sort of the 19th century English anachronistic villagers that we see in Lord of the Rings. They're a bit wilder, closer to the land.
These are very primitive hobbits, right? What about the next one? I've got no clue on this one. There looks like there's a bear claw as a trophy or a talisman on whatever it is he's holding. I can't tell if that's a short staff or if it's a gardening tool of some kind. I have no clue.
No clue on this one. I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe is this somebody who's related to the Bearnings from the Third Age?
Maybe
we'll see some bear shapeshifters. I don't know. That would be kind of cool.
I wondered if it might just be a Hobbit village elder because we're in a bunch of Hobbit images here in a row.
Oh, that could be.
It could be
that's
that
a good
as
point.
well.
Yeah.
But that leads to the next Hobbit image, the little hand holding the berries.
The giant berries.
The giant berries. I don't think I'd eat those. Those are terrifyingly large.
Yeah, I would rather eat berries out of a hobbit's hand than their leg. What about their legs?
Yeah.
They don't need those. No, I think that's definitely another Harfoot for sure.
I do too. As is the next one. And in fact, I actually think I know who that is. I think we're looking at the hands of Sir Lenny Henry. He was the first one to confirm that hobbits or Harfoots would be in the show because he's playing one. And I have a feeling that's him. And I just want to note that the drawings or the not really runes, the pictographs on the map. It's interesting. It's almost like their written language is hieroglyphic in some sense. It's pictographic.
It does. It looks like a very, very ancient script of some kind. Definitely pictographic.
I just thought that was interesting to observe. Maybe a writing system that's pre-alphabetic, right? You look at hieroglyphs. There are words conveyed in images.
They could be pictographic, or maybe each picture represents a sound or something like that.
Maybe. Well, then that would just be complicated runes, I suppose. But yeah,
it would be an early alphabet, really. So
it's fascinating. But yeah, I think that tells us also maybe primitive, like the Harfoots.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely screams primitive.
Mm-hmm. What about this next one? This confuses me a little bit. I think we're back to humans. I mean, I suppose it could be a hobbit, but I'm thinking like a satyr's wife or a merchant woman of some kind back in Númenor.
Could be. I mean, the clothes do look pretty. Well, I mean, there's some interesting colors here.
Yeah, and there's patterns in the the
reds and patterns, I guess, are not the kind of things you do tend to see among like sort of rustic, wandering, nomadic folk.
And there's the beads, the little bracelet of beads.
That's true. It's still kind of simple cloth, though, so I don't know. I don't know if this is Númenorian or not. But
that's what I was thinking. Maybe poorer, like a sailor's wife or something. But I don't know.
Speaking of sailor's wife.
Yeah,
This next guy with the rope around his shoulder's got to be a sailor, right?
that's who I'm thinking. And now that we know that Isildur is a sailor, I wonder if that's Isildur himself.
That's kind of what I'm thinking on this one. I was kind of hoping that this might be Eldarion.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping that was Eldarion.
Yeah, so folks who haven't read The Unfinished Tales, there's a really great story, like the longest story of Númenor in that book, and it's about a sailor prince named Eldarion, and it's the tale of Eldarion and Arendis.
Fantastic story, but they can't touch it because it's part of Unfinished Tales. Yeah.
Right. So obviously not Eldarion, but maybe it's Isildur. I'm also thinking maybe they'll use some of the Eldarion and Arendis material as inspiration.
I'm thinking so too. Mm-hmm.
You know? So yeah, I'm kind of thinking Isildur on this one.
Okay, this next one. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous outfit. And the beautiful flower in her hands. Flower from Nimloth, maybe?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. You might need to explain what Nimloth is.
Well, Nimloth is a tree that is a descendant of Galathilion. It's actually, so Galathilion was a tree made in the image of Telperion, one of the two trees in that first image we looked at. And that tree, of course, would later not be around. And so they made Galathilion in its image. And then a tree called Celeborn was its descendant. And then Nimloth is Celeborn's descendant. And that tree is on Númenor. It was a gift to the Númenorians from the elves.
That's right.
And I would not be surprised if that is a flower from Nimloth. But who's carrying it? I have to say, at first I'm thinking not an elven look, right? Lots of jewelry, a very fancy costume, but not particularly elven. So I thought it was maybe Tarmiriel.
That's who I think it is. We know that Muriel is actually in the story.
We do, yeah.
So that's kind of who I'm thinking this is.
Yeah, there's an outside chance that maybe with that sort of pearly look to the outfit, I kind of thought maybe we were getting a look at a Telerin elf. You know how they
maybe
so many things out of pearl.
Yeah, the Teleri do like to work in pearl, but Númenor is a maritime kingdom.
It is, yeah.
So pearl makes sense for them too. And obviously they had a lot of contact with Telerin elves, right?
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'm saying Tarmiriel as well.
Yeah.
The next one, can we just admit we have no clue? I think it's an administrative assistant or maybe a Senate page to the Númenorian court.
Probably. Undersecretary to one of the Lords of Andunier.
I say Númenorian because of the details on the book, but that's our only clue, isn't it?
Yeah, that is our only clue. But I think you're right to say Númenorian based on the details in the book because we've got this wave motif.
Right.
We've got this fish jumping. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm thinking about this, the more I think that, you know, as these are kind of grouped in batches, I think we're looking at 3 Númenorians here. I think we're looking at Isildur, Tarmiriel, and some other Númenorian.
Oh, that's
next
fair.
To each other.
That's a good point. Yeah, if they're batching them together like that. Because I think we're coming up on some more Númenorians in the next row.
I think so.
The rich blue robes, the gold trim, I mean, it screams royalty, but I want you to take a look at something. Look at the sun motif.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to see it in a couple of more photos. And then also look at the shape of the bits of the belt, the way they fit together, kind of like puzzle pieces. If you go back up to Halbrand's belt, he's the guy who looked kind of Rohirric. It's the same pattern in the belt.
You're right. It is.
And okay, so that tells me this is human and it's almost certainly Númenorian. They're certainly from the same culture.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking if it's Númenorian, could this possibly be Elendil, father of Anarion and Isildur?
It could be.
I don't know.
That would seem to establish some sort of connection between Halbrand and Elendil.
True.
Which is very interesting to think about.
Boy, I love it though. That is a really pretty shot. I love that fabric. I love
it. It's a beautiful, beautiful blue and a beautiful gold. It's a wonderful contrast. I love the ring.
I do too.
You know, the green stone on that ring.
Yes.
Reminds me of the ring of Barahir. I mean, it's not 2 serpents.
No, it's not the ring of Barahir.
It's not the 2 serpents that we see in the movie or that we see described in the book, but that green stone, man, that green stone is very closely tied to
very significant.
The royal lineage of Aragorn, who of course is Elendil's heir and Isildur's heir.
The line of Isildur. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Elendil. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be so cool. I hope it is. This next one though is another one of the no clues, right? Human.
Yeah.
Most likely female, but I'm not sure of that. I can't be 100% convinced on either one.
You know what I notice about the robe that she's wearing, assuming it's a woman?
Mm-hmm.
There's the star motif in the middle.
Yeah.
And then there's these sort of round. So it's basically the pattern is sort of the stars interlaced with these round kind of almost flower looking sigils.
Yeah.
The star reminds me of Gil-galad. It reminds me of Eärendil.
Okay.
the round kind of reminds me of some of the other sigils of elves of the First Age. So like
Right.
Luthien and Idril kind of have like these round
Yeah, you're
flower
right.
sigils. So maybe this is a Númenorian, like you're saying, and maybe those designs are meant to evoke some of the elvish ancestry of the Númenorians. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't have much else there.
No.
I'm curious about the bit of red that sticks in on the left side of the image. Like,
oh, that's a good catch. I didn't even see that until just now. Yeah.
is this somebody else's outfit? Well, I'm a photographer, so I catch stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
And I thought, well, what is that? That clearly doesn't go with the costume. It's almost like that shot. They're teasing us with something, but I can't tell what. But I want to move on because the next image is the one I really want to spend a minute or two on. This gorgeous armor and sword. I mean, look at that piece.
It's amazing.
I've got to say, at first, I admit I was thinking Glorfindel, right? The House of the Golden Flower. His emblem is the Raid Sun. And boy, that fits. But then I noticed something. Remember when I told you to look at Halbrand's sleeves and notice the trim?
Mm-hmm.
The green and gold here is that same exact style. It's different color, green with gold as opposed to that kind of red and brown, but it's that same sort of pattern and the same sort of cloth. So again, man, not elf, and connected with that same house. And if in fact that's Elendil over there in the blue robe, who else might this be than Anarion, the son of the sun?
I think that's a really good guess. And I think that fits really well if the guy in the blue robe we were just talking about is Elendil.
If it's not, all bets are off.
Well, yeah, maybe. But I also am noticing, this reminds me of something from Peter Jackson's movies. For some reason, this reminds me of Boromir in Fellowship of the Ring.
It does. Yeah, a little bit.
Boromir's got the leather bracers and, very ornate design work on them. And Boromir is from Minas Tirith, which was formerly known as Minas Anor, which is named after Anarion and was named after the sun.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe that is a thematic link between the two. I think Anarion is a good guess for this one.
I hope so. I really do hope so. And now we move on to the witch from Snow White, who makes a startling guest appearance on Rings of Power.
That's right. Well, there's going to be 7 dwarfs, so we know that there's going to be a witch.
Okay, maybe it's not the witch because this one does have a beard. But honestly, I have no clue here.
I mean, come on. The witch from Snow White almost has a beard too, but
that's true. Well, yeah, if she doesn't, pluck it after a couple of days, you might as well call it a beard. So, look, I've seen people speculate that this is a wizard. Wizards don't show up until Third Age 1000, so they really have no place here. You have no power here. But they might be, because who knows what they're going to do.
It might be. I don't know. It doesn't really scream wizard to me.
I
don't think so kind of wandering hermit kind of person,
Yeah.
which I guess a wizard is
kind of.
One thing they are is a wandering hermit.
Wandering hermits.
Gandalf.
Gandalf had no place to call home. It's true.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't really know what to do with this, but you're right. I mean,
I think it's somebody in disguise of some kind.
Probably.
It might even, I wonder if it's like Sauron in disguise as some, vagabond.
Sauron in disguise holding an apple and going around tempting people's a little on the nose.
I know. That's what I was thinking, man. It's really on the nose.
But maybe.
I don't know. Who could this be? I don't know. And speaking of Sauron, do we think that's who this big, bad, black, gauntleted guy is with this really wicked looking sword, the last image? I mean, I think we're meant to think Sauron.
Yeah.
But he didn't look like this through much of the Second Age, did he?
No, he didn't, because during the Second Age, he was in the guise of Annatar as the Lord of Gifts. He was handsome, he was charming, he was conniving. So
I don't know.
This isn't how he should look right now, but it sure screams Sauron. It sure screams Mordor, doesn't it?
It really, really does.
If the person to the left is actually Sauron, and these images are grouped together thematically, maybe the person to the left is Sauron and the person to the right is some lieutenant.
Or the man who would become the Witch King.
Some lieutenant.
Some
or
lieutenant.
Some soon-to-be lieutenant, yeah.
I love the way you hesitated there. Like I said, Alan, some lieutenant.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Some lieutenant. I was trying to be the lieutenant, but okay.
Hint.
Fine. Oh, man. Well, folks, I got to tell you, we really wanted to dive into the Vanity Fair article, but time is short and we're going to wrap this episode up here pretty soon. Instead, what we're going to do is give you another episode on Monday that's going to cover the Vanity Fair article and the teaser trailer that's going to drop during the Super Bowl.
That's right. And as Alan just said, that is going to be coming out Monday morning. So please be sure that you've subscribed to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Now, before we go, we want to take a moment to thank the team that helps make this show better. Art Barliman, Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, and website guru Phil Dean.
And speaking of the website, please make sure to give us a visit there once it's up, because right now it's not, right? We're super early in this game, at ringswrapup.com. Now, we've been moving so quickly, it's not built, but soon you're going to find show notes, outtakes, our online storefront, and more.
And you're definitely going to want to check out our library page. While this show is about the Amazon series, Alan and I are fans of the books first and foremost, and we've provided links for you to get nearly every book we mention on the show. And we do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so thank you.
And one last thing as always, please send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, your speculations as to who's who among those amazing pictures to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
Barliman's a lot more reliable lately, but we do get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you as soon as we can, and your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
farewell, friends.